Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Josh here. We're in the shop today. I have something exciting to show you, something new. So Vevor, spelled V-E-V-O-R, is an international equipment and tools company. They supply equipment and tools all over the world for the DIYers, people such as myself. They also have some beekeeping equipment. Well, Vevor recently reached out to me after watching some of my videos and offered to send me I believe this is a 4-frame manual extractor to review. So this is a paid promotion. I did not pay for this extractor. Vevor did send it to me, but I will tell you this, and I promise my audience this: I will always give 100% my honest feedback, irregardless of whether somebody sends me something to review or whether I pay for it myself. But I feel that I need to be fully transparent and let the audience know that I did not pay for this, and I let Vevor know that. So I told them that I was happy to review the manual extractor, but I'm gonna give my honest feedback. So if this thing is trash, then I'm gonna call it trash. If it's great, then I'm gonna sing its praises and call it great. So I will say, if you've watched any of my previous videos when I did the honey extraction, I do already own a Vevor 4-frame electric motor extractor, which I've used for 3 years now, I believe, and it works great. I love it, phenomenal. I've never used a manual extractor. There are some pros and cons that we'll get into that here in a little bit. You know, as we go through this, I'll let you know my thoughts, what I'm thinking, whether I like it, whether I don't, things that I do like, things that I don't like. But I thought I would just bring you guys along for the unboxing video. And then I have a deep worth of honey and a super worth of honey that will go ahead and run through the extractor, and I'll let you know my thoughts as we're going through it. So this, and I'll put a link in the description on this extractor. This, I believe, retails for around $250 before tax and shipping. And they ship all over across the world. So if you look up on their website, it's vevor.com. They really have some good stuff, beekeeping equipment. So again, we'll just go through the unboxing together and I'll let you know my thoughts. So it comes with your standard honey gate. This is the one that's got the little bee logo on it. I've seen this in lots of different applications. These work pretty good. I did have an issue with this for the first time on some of these that I installed on some buckets, but that's because the honey was testing well above an acceptable water percent. So it was running 19, 20, 21%. So that honey was really thin, and this gate wasn't sealing incredibly well. I'll have to check the seal during the off season, during the winter time, but the thick honey did not run through this. So I had to let that honey dehumidify it down in my basement to pull that moisture content down, and it ended up working just fine. So that's been my personal experience with these plastic honey gates. I know some beekeepers, fellow beekeepers, that prefer the metal ones. They just think they hold up better, they last longer, which is probably a true statement. So here you have your handle, because this is a hand crank. So these comes with 3 different legs here, just same as the 4-frame extractor, the electric one that I own. And I do recommend that once you get this assembled, that you find a location where you can bolt this to a floor. I bolt mine to the concrete floor here in the shop. It just works so much better that way. If the honey is a little bit off balance and your extractor starts to shake a little bit, bolting it to the floor, you know, gives it some support and braces it so that it can ride through that imbalance, which generally it'll smooth itself out as the extraction goes. So I'll just set this aside. Just at first glance, these things are these are built well. I mean, it's all stainless steel, solid metal. Let's go ahead and set this on the hive here. Get this out. And I can confirm this is a 4-frame extractor. I'm not sure what, oh, this is the the lids. So I'll go ahead and show you that. I will tell you already, just it's a lot lighter than my electric extractor, obviously. Doesn't have a motor sitting on top of it. So that's one advantage. If you have a hard time lifting heavy objects or moving things, this definitely would be a better mobile option for you. Yeah. So these have screws on them, and I'll install this later, but essentially these just go on the top here, like such. And it just allows you to, when you're extracting, so the honey doesn't fly out. So, I don't know, this probably weighs about 30, 40 pounds, I would say, roughly. I'm sure they have the all the weight and dimensions posted on Vevor's website, which again, I'll put a link to this extractor in the description so that you can find that should you want to go look online. So this is just where your leg's attached to with 2 screws. So I'll get those 3 legs put on. And then it just has the hole here, which is where your honey gate will fasten onto. Really quick setup. Inside, and I'll bring you in closer here in just a minute when I actually do the extraction. But inside is just, you've got your, and I need to cut this. They've got it zip tied here during shipping so it doesn't flail around. But inside it has the gate here that you can put 4 frames into, and it looks like this easily will hold a shallow, medium, or a deep frame. Solid construction here on the top. Not entirely sure how the handle, oh, the handle is just attaches with a set screw. So yeah, it looks like pretty smooth operation. So again, I'll go ahead and get this completely put together. Looks like we may have some more, make sure there's no screws in there. I'll go ahead and get this fully assembled, put the legs on it, get the honey gate installed, get the lids installed and the handle, and then we'll go ahead and extract some honey, and I'll take you guys through that process and let you know my thoughts. Okay, we've got the extractor completely assembled now. It was super easy. It's just a matter of putting the 3 legs on, putting the handle on with this set screw, and I went ahead and give it a good hose down and washed it out with some soap and water. Have everything ready, have the honey gate on, have the bucket and the stainless steel double mesh strainer on top of the bucket. And so I've got the super and the deep ready. I've got the decapping tub ready, decapping knife, and so I think we're ready to go ahead and extract some honey. One thing I would recommend, not with a brand new one like this, it's already been greased or whatnot, but go ahead and pick up some food grade grease for your extractors. It almost looks like a white paste. It does a real good job keeping everything greased and lubricated, especially when you're washing this out, you know, with soap and water. Over time, it just needs lubrication over time. And you want to make sure that it's food grade since you're going to have extracted honey inside here. These lids just set on here. I figured that out. There's a little bit of there's a magnet here, so they're a little bit magnetized, just sit on top of there. Unlike the electric extractor where it can actually attach to the top of the motor. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Let's see, where did I put my, of course I left my tool somewhere. I'm not sure where I put it, which is always the case. Hang on, I'll be right back. I think my hive tool's on the shelf. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and take a look at these frames. Okay. Yep, so a little bit of capped honey in that one. Okay, now, when you're putting these in the extractor, you know, obviously if there's honey on both sides, you're gonna alternate them, but the fact that this outside frame only has honey on one side, you want to place it facing the outside, facing the walls, because these extractors use centrifugal force. And I'll bring in here in a minute and show you closer what this looks like inside, but I'm gonna go ahead and get 4 frames in here real quick. Okay, and this frame has honey on both sides. Go ahead and try to. Nice dark color. About the same color as these bottles on the table here on the left, which is a late summer pull. Unlike that first spring honey I got was pretty light, which has kind of been the case around here. You can give this a shake test. Nothing's coming out. This honey's definitely ready to be extracted. Okay. Now that's a heavier frame, so I'm putting it next to the first frame. You do want to try to balance these extractors in terms of the weight. So this is going to be another heavy frame. So I will put this one in the extractor opposite of the frame I just placed in there. Okay. Now we're towards the very end of the summer. I guess some beekeepers in this area are hoping for a fall flow. It's really been hit or miss, in my opinion, at least in my experience around here. We've had a very, what I would call wet summer. It hasn't been super hot. A lot of the grass and flowers and weeds stayed blooming throughout summer instead of when you get those hot spells where stuff really dries up. Now here recently we haven't had rain in a while, so stuff's really starting to brown up, and we're hoping that we get some rain here in the fall time, and that leads to somewhat of a fall flow. I will not be extracting any more honey for the fall time. So any honey that the bees make this fall, they get to keep. So that frame is mostly empty. That one has a little bit of honey in it. Pretty light, but we'll go ahead and extract that one, and we'll put that opposite of the first frame. Now it's not going to be perfectly balanced, so there will be a little bit of wobbling. But we'll see how this performs compared to the electric extractor. Already just, you know, spinning it out there when I was washing it out, obviously has a gearbox here, because one crank is equal to maybe, I don't know, 3, 5, 8, 10 rotations. which obviously is going to make it a lot easier when extracting. You don't have to turn as much. So go ahead and get the lid on here, and we'll go ahead and I'll bring you in here so you can see it spinning. Okay. So real quick, you can see the 4 frames inside here, holds 4 different frames in the basket. And this frame and this frame are both heavy and full on both sides. These 2 outer frames only have honey on one side. And you want to keep the weight distributed evenly on opposites, because with the centrifugal force, if this is heavy and this is heavy and this is light and this is light, it's going to cause the whole thing to wobble. Now, it's still going to wobble a little bit, but as the honey gets extracted and thrown out of the comb, it will level itself out. But again, this is why it's important to go ahead and bolt the extractor to the floor, because it really helps with that. And so the honey will get flung out of these little bitty cells and up against the wall and fall down to the bottom of the tank here. So let's go ahead and give this a try. And you can see it start to shake. Wow, you don't have to turn quite as hard as I thought you had to. Now, one thing I already don't like, these lids, I guess they technically can't come off because they have little stoppers here, but I really would like to see hinges or a better way to actually attach this to this metal bar in the middle here. Because if you really started cranking on this, you can see here how it's starting to wobble because of the unevenness, which is going to happen. I don't care whether it's a manual or a electric extractor. And this is probably why Vevor put these little plastic pieces on the bottom of the screws here. Otherwise, there's no real reason to have a screw here, is to prevent that from happening. But still, I think it could be designed a little bit better. Of course, this is the engineer in me now. I think it could be designed a little bit better by putting some hinges here, and maybe a little magnet here, so that up against this little metal housing, if you wanted to keep it propped open. So go ahead and bring it to a stop here. I'm curious to see how well it did pulling the honey out of these frames here. So let's take a look at this one, which was full. Pretty good, honestly. I mean, here's what it looks like before, and here's what it looks like afterwards. So honestly, that's really good. I'm going to go ahead and flip this around. Now I only need to flip 2 around, because remember, the frames 1 and 10 only had honey on one side, and that one looks pretty good too, just looking at that one. So, and you can see that how the weight is causing this basket to rotate. So let's go ahead and extract this. All right. Oh yeah. Now, the one nice thing about the hand, if I needed to back off as opposed to the electric motor, which does have a dial on it, I can feel through my hand a little bit better when this is starting to wobble. But as the honey is coming out of this, it's getting more and more balanced. And I do kind of like how you can just set this thing going and it's going to spin for a while. I do like that. I can see the honey flinging to the sides and draining down in the bottom, as you would expect. But this will just sit there and spin on its own for quite a while. What you want to do, you want to make sure you get all of that honey out of the comb. So that's nice. Real smooth in the handle. The gearbox is real smooth. It's not taking me a lot of effort. You know, those of you that, worry if you would, easily tire or get out of breath doing this, I'm not having to use a whole lot of energy to turn this crank. It's actually, relatively smooth and easy to push. It's not difficult. So go ahead and remove one of these and take these frames out. Yeah, that looks real good. Go ahead and take all of them out here. All right, awesome. I'll go ahead and just set this one on top. What I'd like to do now is test the deep frames and see how those pan out, comparatively speaking. So I'm gonna choose 4 heavy frames. Actually, I apologize. These are super frames in here. These are not deep frames, so it's just in a deep box. Well, let's go ahead and extract again and do another round. I thought there were deeps frames in there, but it's the same concept, regardless of whether it's these mediums or full-size deeps. So while I'm doing this, I'll sort of talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the area in terms of pollen. So it is first couple weeks of September here in Kentucky, and there's, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's already dried up, so we don't have any white clover anymore. That's all burnt up. We're getting to the fall time period now where we're about to see the goldenrod start to come out, if it hasn't already. I've not seen it around my property, and I do have goldenrod around me. And then the wing stem and the aster is getting ready to bloom. So that's what I mean when you've got the folks in this area that are hoping for a somewhat of a fall flow. That's what they're hoping for. They're hoping that goldenrod and that aster really takes off. Some folks think goldenrod pollen smells like dirty socks. I don't know. I get it a little bit. If you open a hive and you've got that bright yellow pollen in there, you can kind of get a whiff of something that smells a little bit off, but I don't know. It doesn't bother me too much. Some folks don't like the goldenrod honey. You know, same folks that don't seem to like the redbud honey. I'll be honest with you, I think it tastes just fine. I've had it before. It doesn't bother me any. Is it my favorite honey? Of course not, no. But am I gonna toss it in the garbage or toss it out? Heck no. I think it tastes just fine. So, and I feel the same way about redbud. I mean, I wouldn't want pure redbud honey, but usually redbud only is blooming at the very beginning of the season, and the bees are on so much other stuff shortly afterwards that it just gets mixed in with everything else. But no, I mean, is it as good as sourwood or manuka? I mean, obviously not. But so that actually, this is a friend of mine's equipment. So this is Michelle's deep and super from her apiary, which is just up the road from me. She was kind enough to allow me to extract some honey so that I could review this extractor, which is why I wasn't sure what she had in here as far as whether it was a deep or whether it was a medium. This is why, though, personally, I use, if you've been watching my channel, you know this, I've gone down to just 9 frames in a super because it makes extraction so much easier. You get this, see how I'm having to fight this? I'm having to get my uncapping knife, I'm having to push in on the comb because the bees just don't, they don't they don't build the comb out beyond the wooden edge here. So like with my frames that I have that I extracted this year, the comb was out to here. And it just makes it so much easier to come down with your knife. Now this one's a little bit fat here, which is nice. But you'll see where at the top here, it's a little bit recessed. It's just, you know, it's personal preference like anything with beekeeping, but I think it's a little easier when you have the fatter comb in there. I haven't tried 8 yet. I was thinking about trying 8 next year, but I was told make sure that you start with drawn comb. You don't want to put empty foundation in a super with only 8 frames in there, or the bees will make a mess of it. So, all right, let's go ahead and do our last round here. This one may get a little wobbly too. I'm going to go a little slower and see what happens if I just start slow instead of kind of going after it. Okay, I do see it flinging out. This is real easy. I mean, I could almost do this with 2 fingers, guys. I mean, this is really easy. I want to really point that out, that there's not a lot of effort involved here. Now, if you if you had to go through 100 supers or 50 supers of honey, would this get tiring after a while? Sure. But it's also kind of a good workout. So I'm going to go ahead and crank it up here just like I would the electric, get it going fast. Yeah, I don't like this, so definitely don't like that. That's something I would recommend they design or possibly fix. But as far as the crank, the handle, the gearbox, it's fine, perfectly fine. All right. Now, one word of caution when you're extracting honey. You can see that I have the honey gate closed, and that's because I know that I'm not going to be extracting a ton of honey today. And I'm also keeping an eye on the bottom. So if you look down in the bottom of this extractor, you'll see the honey down there. Here's a pro tip for you. Do not let the bottom of the frames start hitting that honey, especially if you have an electric motor, or you can easily burn your motor out. So you want to really be careful. And again, that looks really good. It's really pulling the honey out nicely. You want to be very careful to make sure that you go ahead and open that honey gate on your extractor before the bottom of these frames start dragging in the honey. That could be a possible advantage of a manual extractor, is that you would feel that resistance, whereas you probably would not feel it, obviously, with an electrical motor, and it might be too little too late and you burn out your motor. Worst case with this, without it being a motor, I don't know, maybe you end up putting stress on your gearbox, which is not a good thing. So just make sure that you open that honey gate before the bottom of your frames start to touch the honey. You know, this is a really nice extractor, guys, especially for the cost. I meant to look up the cost of the 4-frame electric. I want to say it's $350, maybe $400. You can find it on Vevor's website also. So if someone were to ask me, you know, okay, now that you've had experience with both, would you pay the extra money for the motor? And I would say yes, but that's me. So if your personal finances are such that you're trying to really, you know, save money, or you only have so much money and you're getting started with beekeeping, and you know this stuff is expensive, all the equipment, all the boxes, the frames, if you want to extract for honey, all the bottles, the lids, the labels, all of this stuff adds up real quick. So if you only have so much money that you can dedicate towards this, and you know another $150 isn't an option for you, then I would say this is perfectly acceptable, especially for a beginner, somebody that's new, that's just starting out, that may only have 1, 2, 3, 5 hives at the most. You can easily do this yourself. Now, when you start to get into like a sideliner, or you know a backyard enthusiast like myself, you know certainly you get to the commercial side. I'm not talking about the commercial side, but when you start getting into that sideliner, or I would say maybe 10 hives or more, 15 hives, 20 hives, certainly the electric motor is going to save you, and it's going to pay off. Because if you're going through 2 supers, 3 supers a hive, and you've got 10 hives, you know, that's 30 supers or more. You know, that could, I think over time, you're going to be tired, you know, standing here spinning this manually. And the other advantage of having the one with the electric motor is I can set that to run, and I can go ahead and start pulling the next frames out, decapping while that's running, and then go ahead and open the lid, pull the old ones out, put the new ones out. So you can multitask more if you have the electric motor. But again, I think this, in my opinion, I think this is best marketed for the newer beekeeper, somebody that's just starting to get out into this hobby and wants something well built, well constructed, but doesn't want to spend several $100s to $1,000 or more on an extractor. Because, you know, when you're just starting in this hobby, you don't want to put a ton of money into it, because what if you find out that you don't really enjoy it, right? Now you're having to sell everything. So start small, build up over time, make sure that you really enjoy this hobby, and then you can, you know, go ahead and upgrade and get bigger, better equipment if you want, and you can sell your older equipment. There's always new beekeepers getting into the market that are looking for deals or way to save money on stuff. So I think this is very well constructed, and I figured it would be. I assumed it was going to be very similar to the electric one that I had, minus the electric motor, and that's pretty much what it is. And so it does a really good job extracting. I was wondering how well it would do compared to the electric model, which, you know, can really spin fast. But with this gearbox, I'm pretty sure hand cranking, this was spinning every bit as fast as that electric motor was spinning it. Obviously, I just have to stand here and keep cranking. But hey, there's times I set this thing going and it spun for, you know, a minute or more on its own. But it really did a good job here pulling all the honey out. I would absolutely recommend this extractor, especially for the smaller backyard beekeeper that only has, you know, maybe 10 hives or less and is looking at extracting 20 supers or less of honey. And that's just my opinion. Could you use it for more? Absolutely, 100%. Maybe you got a bunch of ambitious kids that live around you that think it would just be super cool and fun to come here and extract honey for you and crank the hand crank for you. If that's the case, fantastic. I would say go for it. But as far as the construction, the stainless steel, this thing, I mean, it's built very solid. Nothing cheap on it. Again, the only thing that I think I would design better would be the tops for this, some sort of hinge or a better way to secure this. This is the only thing, in my opinion, that feels a little chintzy, that I think, you know, they just could have done a better job. And they did do a better job on the electric extractor. It does have hinges, and I think it's a little better than this one. So yeah, that's it. Again, I will put links to what I've used, obviously a link to the extractor down in the description, and I'll also put a link to some of the other stuff, maybe the food grade grease and the buckets and the strainer that I used here. But overall, you know, I would give this 2 thumbs up. I would recommend it. If you're in the market for an extractor, be sure to check out Vevor's website. They've got lots of different options on there. This is just one model that they offer. I believe they have 2 frame models, 3 frame models, 4, and many more. So there's lots of different options on there. So that's it. I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.